Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to Time with PIAC, your platform for staying informed about how Ghana's petroleum revenues are managed and used for national development. And this is hosted by the Public Interest and Accountability Committee, PIAC. Today's edition focuses on the highlights of the 2025 annual report of PIAC. This report provides an independent assessment of how petroleum revenues were collected, allocated, and utilized in line with Ghana's petroleum revenue management framework. Over the next few minutes, we will walk you through the key findings and insights from the report. We will examine how much petroleum revenue Ghana generated in 2025, how these funds were distributed to key statutory funds, and how they contributed to national development priorities. We'll also highlight some important observations made by PIAC regarding the management of the petroleum sector, including issues related to production trends, revenue utilization, transparency, and accountability. Just as importantly, we'll touch on some of the recommendations made by the committee to help strengthen petroleum revenue management and ensure that these resources deliver maximum benefit to the people of Ghana. Stay with us as we break down the key takeaways from the 2025 PIAC annual report. Joining me today is the chair of PIAC, Mr. Richard Elima, to unpack the report. Hello, sir. Good afternoon, and welcome to Time with PIAC.
Thank you.
And congratulations on the publication of your report. It looks like this year the timeline was a bit earlier compared to last year.
Yes, but we still missed the deadline, though by a few days. Yes, but I'm glad we finally got it off the ground.
Sure. So we'll get into the details of the report as we unpack it, just like our topic said. But just to kind of set the context, I'm sure what is PIAC is something that we've spoken about on Time with PIAC a lot of times. But for those who might be watching us for the first time, what is PIAC and why is even your report even important?
Well, PIAC, it's always good to differentiate it from PAC, the Public Accounts Committee of Parliament. We get a lot of questions on the differences between PIAC and PAC. PAC is the Public Accounts Committee. PIAC is the Public Interest and Accountability Committee. They are not the same. PAC is a committee of Parliament, and PIAC is a statutory body established under the Petroleum Revenue Management Act. So that is the difference. PIAC was set up basically in response to public concerns and anxiety over how the state has managed its natural resources over the years. So people make reference to how revenue from gold has been managed in the past. And they conclude that there's been no transparency, government has not been accountable in how it has utilized revenues from gold and other minerals. So PIAC came into the scene. It became a very popular concept as a way of curbing excessive executive influence on petroleum revenues. So basically, PIAC steps in to ensure transparency and accountability in the utilization of petroleum revenues. We have a threefold mandate. One is to monitor compliance of the PRMA, and then two, to provide a platform for public debate, ensure we engage all manner of Ghanaians on petroleum revenue management issues, and also, finally, to provide an independent assessment of how petroleum revenues are used. And based on our reports, inform Parliament and then the executive. So basically, these are our functions. The law also mandates PIAC to publish two key reports. One is the annual report, which is due, I think, on the 15th of March each year, the ensuing year. And then the semi-annual report, which is published on the 15th of September that same year. So the report we are going to look at is the 2025 annual report. Now, these reports are very important because they serve as a reference point to inform Ghanaians on how petroleum revenues have been utilized. And based on it, they then can hold government accountable. They can then ask questions on how their revenues have been used and also provide feedback to government on how they think petroleum revenues should be utilized. Remember recently in one of our newsletters, market women said they needed a share of the petroleum revenue. This is feedback that we are getting, and it's something that we can't gloss over. So these feedback help us a lot in reforming the way we engage our policymakers.
So we'll get into the details of the report shortly, but I just want to pick your thoughts on this. Why should the average Ghanaian care about this report that you're talking about? Because it's quite a technical report.
Yes, it's a technical report because we are talking about a sector that is generally very technical. But the good news is that PIAC goes out of its way to make the report very accessible to every Ghanaian. And we do this through many ways. One, we have the citizens version, which is published in very simple, readable language, and we use more of imagery to communicate. So even people who cannot read can take the citizen version, look at the pictures, and understand what petroleum revenues have been used for. And then the second thing we do is that in our regional engagements, we try as much as possible to speak the local dialect, to break down the report in the local dialect. So recently we were in Techiman and we did our presentation in Twi, and people appreciated it. We go to the north, and if a member among us can speak the language, we speak their local language. Or sometimes we speak the Twi and we get a translator to break it down into the local language of the area where we are. So whatever the case may be, we try as much as possible to ensure that every Ghanaian has access to the report. Every Ghanaian must be interested because petroleum revenues are national revenues. They impact your development. Later we'll get into it, but a share of petroleum revenue goes to the District Assembly's Common Fund. That provides the basic development projects we see in communities done by district assemblies, sanitation, health, education, and so on. So if you are not interested and you allow politicians, you allow the political elite to misuse the revenue, you are signing away your own death warrant as per the fact that the assemblies will not get revenues to execute the development projects that will improve your life.
So now let's get into the report. Just like our topic said, you're going to unpack the report. So we're starting off with oil production, crude oil production. Yeah. And I think one of the key highlights of your report, which has really dominated discussions, has to do with the declining trend. The report notes that for 6 consecutive years, we have seen a downward trend when it comes to crude oil production. So what exactly is driving this trend?
It's unfortunate. We thought, as at the time we were doing the semi-annual report for 2025, we thought, things will turn around. But unfortunately, we are experiencing this decline. Some experts have provided a reason for the declining fortunes in our oil industry. One has to do with the natural decline. Jubilee field, which contributes over half of our total crude oil production, has been in existence for 15 years. And naturally, if you are producing from a finite resource, at a point, it will begin to decline. Mm-hmm. So naturally, it's experiencing a decline. If you have a bottle of water and you keep sipping water from it, at a point, it will drop. You will not get a refill. There's no refill when it comes to petroleum issues. So the natural decline is there. Then we have the 10 field, which came on stream 2016, 2017 with a lot of promise. And it gave us hope that it was going to contribute nearly as much as what Jubilee was doing. But unfortunately, it's been a very disappointing field. With the gas that is coming, we keep re-injecting it into the well to get the oil out. And it's not been good so far. So that has also led to the decline that we are seeing. And then apart from that, we are not getting any investments in our oil sector. Because it's a finite resource, we don't expect a refill, like I just said. But what we can do is to increase the number of fields that we have, increase the number of oil fields that we have. The more oil fields you have, the more production you can get. So even if we get 10 additional fields producing oil, at least every year, each field will contribute something, and that will ramp up production. So we are not getting the investment. And we are not getting the investment also because people have complained about the Act 919 not being fit for purpose. We passed it so many years ago. Others are saying that because the world has changed, we get new producing countries coming on stream. They have very generous incentives for investors. Ours is too high. Investors are having to pay more financial commitments and so on. So they are shunning Ghana and going to Ivory Coast, Namibia, and so on. So that is also a contributory factor. And then let's also not forget that in the past, some decisions by past government also led to the decline in the amount of investments in the oil sector. The unitization policy by the past government led to that protracted litigation with ENI that went to international arbitration and painted Ghana black among oil investors. So that also led to that. And then there are also the technical issues. They've complained about our data not being up to standard. We are still using very archaic data. They are talking about block sizes which are also too small and so on. So these factors combined have led to a decline in the investments in the oil sector, and that has also reflected in the decline in production.
So in terms of numbers, can you give us an idea how we are faring in terms of production?
Yes. So we hit the peak of 71.4. So let's use as a reference point. 71.4 million in 2019.
Okay.
It dropped down to 48 million in 2024. Okay. Then dropped further to 37.3 million in 2025. So you see the steep decline. Yeah. And I am scared that if this trend continues, we may not even get within 10 years for us to, we'll get to a point where we say we don't have oil anymore.
I was actually going to ask what would be the long-term implication if this steep decline that we are seeing continues.
If it continues, we will have no oil again. And that will be disastrous in terms of the revenues that we are getting. Much as it is declining, government still gets some modest revenue from oil. So if it gets to a point where we've exhausted our oil, we are no more producing the oil, to get to a point where the producers will tell you that it costs more to pump the oil than, and so on. So they will just stop producing at all in order not to incur any cost. When it gets to that point, our revenues will also, go down. And then Ghana will lose its luster as an emerging oil country, and no investor will want to come in. I mean, that is a sad aspect of it.
So we are not hoping or praying for the sad aspect to come, but then what are our options when it comes to this decline? What can we do to either reverse or manage this decline?
The first thing we need to do is to look at the legal and regulatory framework. I think that is the bottom line. That is the basic step that we need to do. First of all, let's review the Act 919 and align it with modern, contemporary frameworks, as we have in countries like Ivory Coast and Namibia, whilst at the same time being very careful not to be embroiled in the race to the bottom. The race to the bottom concept is one country sees another country charging, let's say, 5% royalties. So, okay, I have reduced mine to 4%. Another country says, okay, then I'm reducing mine to 2%. So we are all racing to the bottom. I hope we don't get to that point. But realistically, let's look at averagely how much each country is charging, and let's stay within that range instead of attempting to take everything, within one shot. When that happens, it doesn't make us attractive enough. So let's review our royalty rate, let's review our income tax rate, and so on. And then the second thing we need to do is to look at attracting investment into the sector itself. Government has to do a lot more. Let's package our oil sector. Let's package it as an investment package, sell it out there to the big time investors. There's a lot of potential in our basins, a lot of it. At least we have some data that indicates that some areas are very promising. So let's package these areas to investors so that they can come in, do more exploration, get more oil, and then help us produce. Once they come in to produce, I'm sure we can either maintain our production levels or even increase it.
So now let's shift our conversation into revenue and then how we use the revenue that came in 2025. So there's a decline. Did this affect revenue in any way?
It did significantly. 2024 with 48 point something million barrels, we had $1.2 billion. Then 2025 with 37 million barrels, we could only make 770 million. And that's a drop of more than 500 million. And just imagine what $500 million can do in this country. I mean, just imagine. $500 million can buy more transformers to end this doomsday we are experiencing. $500 million can construct more schools across the country and eliminate all schools under trees. $500 million can finish almost all the Agenda 111 hospitals stranded in the bushes. $500 million can tar a number of roads across the country. $500 million can finish up our airport infrastructure to make Ghana more modern. So it can do a lot of things, provide water and for very deprived communities and so on. But we lost it. We lost it because of declining production.
So the little that we got, how are these revenues allocated?
Yeah, so a new government comes into power January 2025 and decides that instead of spreading the ABFA on a number of projects, it's going to focus only on road infrastructure, or what they call the big push. So in 2025, over 90% of the money went into the big push. And this is because the law was amended. So there are only two uses for petroleum revenue: the big push and then the 5% that goes into the District Assembly's Common Fund. But unfortunately, even the 5% that is supposed to go to the District Assembly's Common Fund, it didn't go. Only 0.0 something went there, which is far, far, far below what the law mandates the government to pay. So over 90% of the amount went into the big push, but the money has not been used. I think it's important to stress that fact. The money is still sitting in the Bank of Ghana, waiting to be disbursed for, I think, the Accra-Kumasi Expressway.
But I'm sure that in course of writing your report, maybe you would have asked some questions as to why the money was not utilized. Did you get any responses in that regard?
Yeah, the finance minister's explanation is that he's building funds specifically for the Accra-Kumasi Expressway.
Okay.
The feasibility studies have been done and the project is yet to take off. That is why the money is sitting there, waiting for the project to take off, and then they can then disburse it to the contractors. So the source of funds for the Kumasi-Accra Expressway or Accra-Kumasi Expressway is petroleum revenue, mineral royalty, and then some budgetary allocation from government.
So as PIAC, were you okay with the explanation that we had petroleum revenues coming in a particular year? We decided that, no, we are not going to disburse it, let it sit and then build a buffer.
Yes. It's important to also stress that it is not in our mandate to decide for government how it uses petroleum revenue. We can only suggest. And one of the suggestions we've made over the years is that petroleum revenue should be spent on legacy projects. And clearly the Accra-Kumasi Expressway is a legacy project. So PIAC has no problem with it. We fully support it. So the only issue we raise in our report has to do with transparency issues. Transparency in the sense that till date, the government hasn't come too clear on the details of the project. We know how much it will cost. We know where the project will be sited, but we don't know the other nitty-gritties, which how many contractors are we looking at? How much are we paying each contractor? What are the phases of the project? I mean, some of these big projects, they divide them into lots. How many lots are we talking about? Who gets what? All these finer details are very important for us because of the inspections that we do. So if you give us these details that lot one is from this area to that area, this contractor is handling it, it will cost this much. Then when we get to the field, it will be easier for us to monitor. But as we talk, we don't have those details. And that is a source of worry.
Okay, sure. Would keep our eye on that space, and then maybe in your subsequent reports, maybe would get to see that information that you are requesting. But I just wanted us to, before we move to the accountability and governance issues that the report identified, I just wanted us to touch on PIAC funding for 2025.
Yeah. Because
of the amendment you spoke about on the use of the ABFA. Just give us an overview of that.
The 2025 happened to be a worst year when it comes to funding. It's the driest year for us, very, very dry, because we didn't get enough funding to even undertake our statutory duties. And it's also because the law was amended. Previously, before January 2025, PIAC was on the ABFE. So our budget was charged to the ABFE. Then the amendment came in 2025, where we were taken off ABFA because all the money was going into infrastructure. Now, because all the money went into infrastructure, then somehow PIAC got stranded. We were put on the Ministry of Finance's own budget. So essentially, the ministry had to give us part of their money. And our budget was not, we didn't even get up to half of the budget that we submitted. And that impaired our ability to undertake our statutory activities. But
I guess this year has been better?
Oh, far better, far better. We luckily engaged the Minister of Finance. We engaged him and we had a goodwill. He approved our budget for 2026 and straight away gave us 60% of our budget, which we are still using. So far, our liquidity situation is very good.
That's great to hear. So now let's settle on the governance and accountability issues that the report identified in 2025. What are some of them?
Yeah. One is what I've raised, issues of government pumping all the money into the big push, but not providing adequate information to the public. Every Ghanaian must have heard about the big push, about the Accra-Kumasi Express. Why do I always keep saying Kumasi-Accra?
It's Accra-Kumasi.
Accra-Kumasi Expressway. Yeah. So the only problem is that we don't have enough details. We are only told, we are only shown the artist's impressions and all that, but not much detail is out there. So that is one thing that we flagged. The other thing has to do with the intransigence of GMPC in paying the money that ex-local, earns from its liftings. We see it as a brazen breach of the PRMA, and it's something that we shouldn't even tolerate. It hurts us to keep repeating this because we've raised it at several fora with different characters and all that, but the problem still persists. And it's something that we are very worried about. We can't have a state-owned entity breaching the law so brazenly and being so proud of it to that extent. So that is also one issue that we flagged.
So before you move on to the other issues, I just want us to dwell a bit on this ex-local issue, just to give our viewers a bit of a background. Because you keep mentioning persistence, breaches, and all of that. So just a bit of a background on what brought us here.
Okay, let me break it down. So when we discovered oil, one of the partners in the Jubilee field was Anadako. Anadako had a 7% stake in the field. They operated for some time and they decided to pack out of the country. By convention, the first right of refusal, that is when they are selling, the person they have to offer the shares to first should be the government. So GMPC, which operates on behalf of government, elected to buy the shares, but they didn't have money. So they approached the Ministry of Finance, took a loan to buy the shares. So they bought the shares, and when they bought the shares, they incorporated a company called GOHL, or Jubilee Oil Holding Limited, to do the lifting that Anadako should have done. So GOHL was doing the lifting on behalf of GMPC. Now, when they did the lifting, the money that they generated, by law, PRM, that is PIAC's position, that money should have gone into the Petroleum Holding Fund because it is an indirect revenue from petroleum sources that comes to the state. But GMPC disagreed with our position. They say that Ex-Loco, which is a successor to GOHL, is a limited liability company created by them. It's a private entity. So their earnings do not constitute state revenues. They will not pay into the PHF. So that is where we are now.
So what measures are you exploring, or what measures are you considering in bringing finality to this issue? Because we know it started from GOHL not paying, and then now it has transitioned to Ex-Loco. So as PIAC, what are your options when it comes to this particular issue?
Yeah, our key stakeholder, our most significant stakeholder is Parliament. We met the Parliamentary Committee on Finance, and this issue came up. So they advised that we speak to the Attorney General and then seek an advice on it. So we have an appointment with the Attorney General very soon, and then we'll hear what he has to say. But I cannot preempt what we'll do afterwards.
But in terms of, I know GMPC is one of your key stakeholders.
Yes.
So have you explored that stakeholder avenue to resolve this issue?
In fact, 2024 or 2024, GMPC, was it 2024 or 2023? I think 2023. GMPC had a meeting with PIAC. It was a special meeting with PIAC members and others. I think with PIAC members alone. There were no other stakeholders. And we had a full session where they stated their position. We also stated our position. And there was no consensus. Since then, we've had, I think, 2 other meetings, if my memory is right. And we've all stuck to our positions. There's been no shift. That is why it's important to get the Attorney General to bring some finality to the issue.
So we look forward to having some finality to the issue. But I'd want us to move to, what are some of the recommendations that the report made?
Yeah, obviously, to ask government to do very well to bring in investments into the oil field. So we recommended we speed up our efforts, not just the usual normal way doing roadshows and all that. Let's adopt other means of getting investors into the field. And then also to introduce technology and more investment into the TEN field so that we'll be able to extract more oil from that field, so that that field will be able to realize its potential in contributing to production. And then we also recommended that the Minister of Finance has a second look at the capping of the stabilization fund. Since 2020, there's been a cap on the stabilization fund, and that has deprived the state of key revenue. As we talk, if we were applying the correct formula, we should be getting over $500 million in our stabilization fund. But currently we have only, as at 2025, December 31st, we had only 174 million. It is way, way below. If we have any emergency now, it will be very difficult to address it. So we recommended to the Minister of Finance to go back and have a look at the capping. If we can remove the capping, we will be able to grow that fund and let it be in a position to support the country in times of emergency. And then we also recommended that there should be transparency. We have nothing against government's decision to use the money to do Accra Kumasi Expressway, but government should be very transparent about it. Let Ghanaians know the details of the project, and more importantly, also engage Ghanaians. Let's engage Ghanaians at every step of the way, so that we carry everybody along, to not be just any ordinary Ghanaian project.
So how has the government and Parliament been responsive to these recommendations that PIAC makes each year?
Yeah, interestingly, the comments I've heard from the government side, they all tend to agree with us. They all tend to support our opinions. And the government officially says, yes, okay, we'll do something about it. So we are a key stakeholder. We stand ready to support government in whatever way we can to ensure that we improve our petroleum sector.
So we'll be dwelling on citizen engagement shortly. So in line with that, I'm coming back to my online audience. You're part of the conversation. Today we have been trying to unpack the 2025 PIAC annual report on the management and use of petroleum revenues for January to December 2025. So before Chair comes in with his comments on how PIAC is going to ensure that citizens get to engage with this report, get to understand what is in there. If you have any questions or comments, you can just drop them in the comment section and then we'll respond to them. So coming back to my guest here. So PIAC report is out on the website. You started engagement. Beyond these engagements, how do people still get to hear about the findings or the recommendations that is being made in this report?
Yeah, they should look out for the nearest district where PIAC is showing up. And we always give the information ahead of time. whenever we go for our district engagements, we publicize it on our social media handles. So if you happen to be in the district or region, yeah, show up and then let's talk. And apart from that, we have our social media handles. You have Facebook. And just before we came on air, we were talking about some comments some people posted on our Facebook page and so on. Sometimes, depending on the issues, people get very engaging on our social media pages, which is very encouraging. So anybody who has a question, who has feedback for us, can go to our social media handles and then drop us a line. We'll get back to them. They can also contact us on WhatsApp. I'm sure before we end, you will put it out there for them to know. We are on Instagram. And then the report is also on our website, www.piaghana.org. They can go there and then download the report and other reports and read it for themselves. I was shocked when somebody from Obuasi sent me a message that he had detected some minor error.
In the report?
Yes.
Interesting.
He said, in your semi-annual report, you said this figure. Then in your annual report, you said this. So there's a discrepancy there. I said, let me check. So I called him and we looked at it, and truly, apparently what we uploaded was not the updated one and so on. But we rectified it. That tells you that some people are watching, some people are reading. So I will encourage everyone to go to the website and then download all the reports. And our dashboard, very beautifully done. The figures are there. I am not a fan of figures, but I love these figures because of the color combination, the designs and all that. So academics, researchers, you can always go there and then get all the figures. From the time we started petroleum production in December 2010 till the 31st December 2025. Very
well, Chair. So before we wrap up, we would reiterate the comments made by the show on how you can engage with us at PIAC. But Chair, before I let you go, what gives hope or concern about the future of our petroleum sector?
I'm an optimist, but sometimes in the face of the figures, even the patience of Job begins to shake. Yeah, but then I believe things will turn around. There are some subtle signs, though not very significant, but then they give me hope that in the near future, our petroleum industry will pick up and then emerge glorious again. And Ghana will be not just an emerging oil producing country, but a major oil player in the field. And over here, I would wish to tell the government to place a lot more emphasis on gas. I think we underrate gas. In the industry, we place so much emphasis on oil and we forget about the gas. But if government were to place more emphasis on the gas, gas can power our industrialization, gas can power our energy sector. Recently, the Ghana Gas Company was asking for tariff increases and so on. If we streamline our gas industry, it can power our energy sources, can power households through the LPG that we use, and it can also help industries. So this gives me some hope.
Very well. And I think it's the conversation on gas is something that we should consider on Time with PIAC, just to get people to understand that the industry has both oil and then gas. But thank you very much for making time to help us unpack this report today. So Richard Elima was my guest, and he's the chair of PIAC. And then he helped us to unpack the 2025 PIAC annual report. And that brings us to the end of today's edition of Time with PIAC, where we discussed some of the key highlights from the 2025 PIAC annual report on the management and use of petroleum revenues. As we have heard, Ghana's petroleum resources remain an important source of revenue for national development. However, ensuring that these resources are managed efficiently, transparently, and in the best interest of Ghanaians requires strong oversight, responsible decision-making, and active public interest. So the report is available on our website, www.piaghana.org. We encourage you to visit the website and then download a copy of the report. You can also reach out to us via any of our social media handles here on Facebook, on X, Instagram, LinkedIn at PIAC Ghana. You can also send us a WhatsApp on 055-441-6544 and we'll share a copy of the reports with you. So until we come your way next month with another edition of Time with PIAC, please stay connected, stay engaged, stay informed. I'm Jessica Champon. Thank you for spending your afternoon with us. Enjoy the rest of the day.